Welcome to And How Does That Make You Feel? My name is Stori. I am very excited to have you all here today with me because the last time I did this, I refused to say my guest name in the beginning. I'm so sorry, Michelle. I was just talking to Michelle, talking to her. I was like, I haven't even said her name yet. So I'm going to say your name now
Sounds good.
and then introduce you. This is Corinne Hudson. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist associate.
Oh, girl, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist now. Drop my associate.
Oh, you dropped the
I
associate.
did. It took a while, but
Okay.
we there.
No more associate therapist. Congratulations, by the
Thank
way.
you.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank
And then
you.
you also are a registered yoga teacher, still at 200 level?
Yes, still 200 level.
Okay. Any plans? How many levels are there?
So you can get your 500, that would be your next level.
Okay.
And then you can become an expert or like a master yoga teacher, which I kind of, as of right now, have no plans on doing that.
Okay.
But you can also get a lot of different other certifications. Like I think that you can do 300 level and like specific like trauma certifications or yin yoga and things like that. So it's a lot of different in the yoga world. There's a lot of paths you can take.
I feel like at one point when I'm done with corporate, I just want to be a yogi.
You can be a yogi now.
I can
Mm-hmm.
just live on the land or something.
You can be a yogi at work at your desk.
Really? We'll talk about that. But then you're also a certified Reiki practitioner.
Yeah, so I'm a certified Usui Reiki practitioner on the second level. And that also, so a lot of times people are master Reiki teachers. Again, I just been doing a lot. So I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying to keep it as low key as possible. But yeah, so level 2 Reiki practitioner.
Amazing, because you really work with all kind of variations of healing. So you work with a soul-centered approach.
Yes.
Creating that space for your clients to have this transformative, you even use the word metamorphosis, I guess experience. And besides the yoga and the Reiki, you also do tarot. You use more non-traditional forms of healing, oracle cards, human design, astrology, all to help your clients understand the patterns in their life, in their relationships. And that's why I felt you were the perfect guest for me to have for this episode. So we're going to dive really deep into therapy and in different forms of healing. There's a lot of myths out there, but also wanting to validate some people who say, well, I've tried this form of therapy or I tried this form of healing and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And they're probably being told, well, try again. Or, and maybe that is the best way, try again, find something that works. But also, you can go about healing in so many different ways.
Yes, there is a whole world to that. Traditional talk therapy is great, right? And
that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or is that different?
So cognitive behavioral therapy is actually a theory within the talk therapy world.
Okay.
Cognitive behavioral therapy essentially helps you understand like your thoughts and then the feelings that are behind them and help you kind of reprocess that and look at it from a different way. But there's also like narrative therapy or theory, internal family systems. So these theories are what a lot of therapists will often feel most aligned to and what calls to them the most. And when we're learning in therapy school how to be therapists, and it helps you be able to kind of stay grounded as you're guiding your client through their healing journey. So cognitive behavioral therapy is probably one of the most popular types of therapy. But from my perspective, and most recently, a lot more research is coming out that a lot of the trauma that we experience is actually within our bodies. And naturally, cognitive behavioral focuses a lot just on like your thoughts, your behaviors, your feelings. And so it doesn't really talk about, okay, well, when I get triggered, my stomach starts to hurt, or my
Yeah.
hips get tight, and my neck and my shoulders are
I get
tense,
hot.
right? I get hot. I feel anxious. And so that's why a lot of times I think the more body-based and somatic therapies are becoming a lot more popular, like EMDR, like what we were just talking about, or even just somatic movement, allowing clients to understand both the thought pieces of what's happening for them, but also the feelings in their body, because we live in a very fast-paced world. So we're almost always disconnected with our bodies. And it gets really hard to process and understand what's happening when you're like, okay, but I feel like I can keep going. I feel like I'm fine, but I am constantly tense and I don't know how to release the tension in my body, or I just constantly feel like I'm unable to breathe, take a full deep breath. And so some of these theories and the things that I've taken on, I think just give a different layer of helping clients and helping them understand themselves and what's happening for them, so that again, transformation can occur. And I think we were talking about this. I'm a double Gemini sun and moon, but I'm a Scorpio rising.
Feel
And
things deep.
so transformation, all things 8th house, 12th house, like how do we take you from this layer of yourself and go even deeper, is quite literally my passion. It's something I love to do.
Double Gemini and a Scorpio. Oh my God. Those are two of my favorite signs, though. The Geminis and the Scorpios. So
It's so hard, girl. I be wanting to be quiet so bad, but I can't.
I can't shut up.
I can't shut up.
And so when you're working with your clients, is there a sort of process that you go through to figure out what they need? Or are you all trying things out here and there and then going from there?
So what I will say is that luckily with the internet these days, clients can get a sense of who I am and what I do initially through like bios and things of that nature, which can help them. They have a general idea of what the process may look like. Throughout each intake, essentially we sit down, even sometimes beforehand, we'll do, a consultation, which is why I tell people, like, interview your therapist. Do a free consultation, ask questions, ask their strategies, ask their theories, things you want to know, because it's so important. But that's a little known fact that people don't know. And it's important to feel like you can vibe with that person, because aside from a lot of our intimate lives, and our partnerships and things of that nature, this is the most vulnerable and intimate relationship you have with another human. And so basically, in the consult, I may say, well, what are you looking to get out of therapy? What are some of the goals that you have? And so when we come in for our initial intake, essentially we'll go over paperwork, informed consent, knowing your rights, knowing your privileges and things of that nature. And I usually, with my couples, I'll say, tell me your love story, because I feel like sometimes it's a lot to just like jump in and like, okay, well, what brings you here? Like that could be a lot. So sometimes I'll say that, or with my individuals, I'll kind of talk about, well, tell me some of the things that brings you here. What are you looking to get out of therapy? Now you can say as little or as much as you want in that first session. And by then I'm kind of getting the idea of, okay, like maybe this client might want some more movement. Maybe they might want some breath. I generally incorporate breath work in any session, because it's just a great way to bring you back to the space, bring you back to your body, and kind of figure out what we're needing to move forward. But there are clients who are really into, tarot and astrology. And so I'm throwing that in right away. There are clients who aren't maybe necessarily into that, but I'm still able to say, okay, well, because I grew up in a Baptist church, I'll use metaphors from the Bible, because that might connect with them differently. And so a lot of it, for me at least, and this might not be every therapist practice, is very intuitive. Like I have to feel it out. I have to be able to kind of see what's going on, see what the vibes are, and hopefully be able to work with them. But it is a collaborative process. And I tell clients that. I say, you are your inner expert. You know you better than I ever will. I'm not going to be home with you. I'm not going to be witnessing the things that you witness. And so if at any point you want to say, you know what, Corinne, that's not really right. That's not, you didn't really get that right. You're more than welcome to do that, because I want you to feel safe to say, hey, can we take it this way? Or this wasn't quite the way I was trying to describe it, or you're just wrong. I'm fine with that too. So it's a lot more of a collaborative process, and I think we think therapy is, because we're used to seeing people like laying on the couch, right?
And just, yeah.
And just like talking, and the therapist is just taking notes and things of that nature. But it's allowed to be, a one-on-one relationship where we walk with you to grow together.
And I think that also speaks to how that collaborative piece, I always see people come into therapy and they're a bit closed off. And maybe they're not completely honest, and that doesn't give room for the therapist sometimes to call you out on your shit the way that my therapist does. And so would you agree with I guess the idea that you put in what you get out from therapy?
100%. I want to think how I want to word this. So I don't want to make light of the fact that the trauma that we experience really does create those blinders that we have,
Right,
and those pieces that close us off to the world. And a lot of therapy is change, and you can be at different stages of the change process, right? The first part of the change process is pre-contemplative. So you haven't even really thought about the changes that you want to make. So we can meet you right there where you're at. We might, I have some clients where you just be shooting the shit for a couple of sessions, because they have to create what we call the therapeutic alliance. You have to feel like you can trust me to go deeper before you go deeper. That's not for every client. And it's important for therapists to remember that sometimes we get stuck on, especially with insurance and things, like we have to see change. We have to see change. We have to see progress. Are you making your goals? But sometimes the goal is just to have the client maybe regulate their breath and not be tapping and anxious in the room, right? And that might take weeks on end before you even begin to learn more about them and their inner world. And so it's definitely helpful to want that change, right? Because we can't want it for you. We can't want it more than you want it. And there may be times where people aren't necessarily ready for that change. And that's what the therapy world can do, is gently provide you with this, well, have you ever thought about it this way? And what would it look like if you did things differently, versus, well, you just got to change. Like, why are you doing that bad habit? It's bad. So it's a lot around having patience and understanding and meeting your clients where you're at.
That thought of like the coming in and saying, oh, you just need to change, reminds me of how some people would also say the reason they stopped going to therapy was the therapist said I was too self-aware and they couldn't help me. What are your thoughts on that?
So people who have high levels of self-awareness, it's great. It's not a bad thing. Right. I wanna put that out there. And most likely what we see with that is that people are intellectualizing their feelings. And what I mean by that is you're able to say, oh, well, I know that I feel frustration, and I know that I feel angry or anxious, and this is how my anxiety works. And so you're kind of stuck in this brain piece, right? You're stuck in having the awareness of it. But what happens when you bring it down in your body? Because this up here is knowledge, but this is wisdom. So being able to apply the knowledge into the practicality of how it shows up in your body is the wisdom. So self-awareness is great. And can we take it a step further and say, okay, well, what does that feel like in your body? How do you know when you're anxious in your body? How do you know? Does the thought come before the feeling? Does the feeling come before the thought? So self-awareness is not a bad thing, but I think a lot of times we get caught up in knowing, and it can be really hard actually also to do something differently, because the brain kind of says, well, the problem, so the problem's solved. Now that we know it, that's it.
That's it.
But a lot of times it's okay, now that we know better, what can we do differently? And can we have some space to do things differently and just try it? As a human, that's a lot of our life, is trial and error. As much as we don't like that, it's really trial and error based on each stage and phase and version of ourselves.
So for those self-aware people, they would need to probably, not gonna say need, but might benefit more from finding a therapist that can take them to that next step of, okay, you know that you do this thing, you know that you're in your head. How can we now implement change?
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of, in my opinion, somatic work comes in very beneficial, is because let's say that you've been in the talk therapy world for 5 years now. You know the logo, the slang, you know the hot button words, you know boundaries, right? You
How does that
know,
make you feel?
right, right. You know all of the terminology. And so that's where modalities like Reiki can come into play, because Reiki isn't therapy, but it helps you understand your body, and it's energy healing, right? It's the subtle body. And or even yoga could be helpful for those who are very self-aware, because it allows you to take that self-awareness and now say, okay, well, how does my foot feel, right, when I'm in this position? How are my hips feeling when I'm doing this? Oh, and then what are the thoughts that are coming up when I'm doing these things? And so I think a lot of times those who are very self-aware, just have a lot of experience in the therapy world, can benefit from a lot more somatic practices, because it takes you out your brain and your mind, and it kind of gives you no other choice but to be in your body. And you might find something new, you might not, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes therapy can just be maintenance. It doesn't have to be, I need to come in and revamp my whole life. It can be preventative. It doesn't have to be reactive. And so it's an opportunity, and truly therapy is a space where you get to make it what you want it to be. But I don't think a lot of us are taught that that's what therapy is.
That we make it what we want it to be. Like fit it to our needs, almost like a Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's like customizable.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of come in and, because the thing is, let's say you've been working with your therapist for over a year now, you're definitely a different version of yourself, right? Whether it feels like it or not, at times you've grown, things have changed. And so you might need to readjust your goals. You might have things going on in your life. You might have things that you've experienced, traumas you've experienced, or things along the way. And so it is a very customizable thing, because it has to be allowed to grow and mold with you as you go along on your journey.
And I feel like I'm also at that point now with my therapy. My therapist is, I've been working with her now for 3 years, maybe. And I have grown a lot from where I was in the beginning, going through some rough stuff. But now I was just looking at my life, like, what are other things that I want to work on? And one of the biggest pieces was like romance, my love life. I was like, I haven't dated. I've never been in a relationship. So I was like,
Really?
never.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I asked her, I was like, hey, let's work on that.
Yeah.
Let's actually delve in deep on, seeing what my blockages are, because I do feel like now I'm at a point where maybe I am blocking myself. So I wanted to work with her on unblocking those things, taking baby steps into the whole romance world. So
that's going to be a fun journey.
It's been fun. It's been interesting. I know people make fun of like Hinge and Bumble and sorts, so we'll see.
I think that's just the reality of where we're at now. And I do think that there's a blessing in a lot of those things, and there are growth edges in those things as well. And so it's all about making it work for you, not necessarily doing what others are doing in order to get that same success.
Yeah. I think I have a bit of an advantage. So I'm like, oh, I'm working with my therapist on this.
Right.
She's guiding me here. So I don't feel like I'll reach a lot of those roadblocks. But no, but I like what you were saying, because it kind of gives me confirmation that I am approaching it the right way with my therapist, and just like, what do I want to get out of this?
Right.
What kind of experience do I want to have? And so let me work with her to create that space.
Yes, and you're always able to do that. I think we forget the autonomy that we have in a room, because when you come into a therapist's office, right, there's this inherent power of, these therapists know more than me, right? Like, this is the expert. This is the person who will help me get through this. And that is true. Expert is a heavy word, but I guess because we're licensed, yes. But the thing to remember is that you are also your own inner expert and you know what's true for you. Just like you said, okay, I've been growing and I think I'm feeling like I need to kind of shift this. You are allowed to tell your therapist, like, I want to kind of change course and direction. I kind of want to go a different way. I'm thinking I want to do this. The power in the room only lies with that we have different levels of expertise, right? I don't know what you do for a living, but you are probably way more expert level than I would be, right? And so remembering that you have the ability to kind of say, I want to go this way. This is not feeling right anymore, or this goal doesn't really align with me, or we've checked off this box already, or at this point in my life, I want to do something differently. And most therapists will say, okay, great. Like,
Yeah.
let's kind of create some goals. Let's see how we can go about things from there.
And so that was the other thing. I talked about this a little bit with my last guest, India, because she used to practice, she used to be a practicing therapist, and she talked about how she couldn't really guide that person to an answer, more so working with them to find that answer because she doesn't even know if her assumption of what the answer is even the right answer.
Correct.
So it seems like that's also where that helps the therapist is, I'm not really, I can't heal you. I can't, and I can't probably even lead you to the water, like, but I can be your companion in that.
Yes. Yes. Like, I will say that I think how we think therapy is from TV and media, it's like, oh, my therapist is just going to tell me what to do. Like, they have all the answers and they'll be able to help me.
They'll tell me what's wrong.
They'll tell me what's wrong. They'll fix me, right? And I am a very firm believer that you are not broken. You're not a broken person. We all have various parts of ourselves that make us whole, right? You have the part that wants to go to the gym, and then you have the part that wants to lay in bed all day, and they coexist within us. And so there are times where you may want a quick fix. You may feel like, okay, this one part of me is really destructive. But a lot of times those parts are working together because they think that they're doing what's best for you. And so coming into the therapy room, you think, okay, well, can you just give me what I need to do in order to get out the situation, or help me stop doing X, Y, and Z, or tell me what I need to do, tell me what's wrong with me. I can highlight, okay, it seems to, you've told me that this pattern happens when you think about this, and then this behavior happens, and then, you tend to feel this way afterwards, and then it kind of starts over again. So we're really just like observers, right? We're not fixers. We're not coming in to change things for you. We're, like you said, we're not even healing you. We're presenting you with different ways, or at least I can speak for me. I want you to learn yourself in a different way. I want you to understand and maybe have some better compassion around why you show up this way. And I want you to give yourself some grace in that. And then I want you to be able to learn how to work with your natural abilities, learn how to work with yourself. Like, okay, maybe, you're a little anxious. How do we work with that anxiousness? How do we identify when it starts? How do we know things that help it feel better? How do we know the triggers that kind of start to ramp it up? Now that you know this, can we fit things and work around it in a way that, okay, I know that if I have a stressful week in the semester, I know I need about an hour quiet time afterwards to kind of fully wind down in my body and to feel present in my body again. Or if I start to feel that thought that triggers my heart racing, then I know I need to do my breath work. I know I need to be present. I know I need to bring myself back to the moment. So we're not here to fix you. You're not broken. Just want to be very clear on that. We're here to help you understand yourself and be able to provide different perspectives and different paths that you might take, versus where sometimes it feels like you only have one path to take. So it's kind of just very much, hey, we have the 10,000 foot view and can see that, oh, you're like 3 steps out from the forest, right? You're so close to the clearing. But when we're in the forest and the trees are so dense, it's like that panicky feeling, like, I don't know how to get out of here. And so that's what we do, is kind of guide you along the way and say, well, if you try it this way, or maybe trying this, or it seems that, if you take your deep breaths, you're able to walk a little bit faster, or kind of see through the trees in a different way. So it's all about being able to just provide a different perspective for you.
You mentioned a lot about the body and reconnecting back to the body. what do you feel are the benefits of that? You know, do you feel that there probably are a lot of people who are not connected to their body, and what some of the symptoms, I guess, would be of not being connected? And then when you get connected, what could that benefit?
Well, that's a lot of question. Where do I even want to begin?
We can just do examples. I know. So connecting to the body also is really important for me too, because I read Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, and she talked about how we don't have the language for things like emotions. We get disconnected from the body, causes us to act out from our values, terrible things. So I love this topic, and I would love to hear what you think about just connecting to the body. Yeah.
So I think I will speak from my experience as a Black woman.
Okay.
Right. So as a Black woman, I think a lot of us are conditioned to push through, push forward, keep going. Right. And so it can be very hard from my perspective to even acknowledge, well, even if I have the capability to keep going, I'm tired, right? It's so hard to even recognize exhaustion if you're not like, okay, I need to run myself rampant and then I'm tired at the end of the day. Being connected with your body allows you to say, you know what, I actually don't want to go out. It's like, you know what, even if I'm not exhausted, I deserve rest. I deserve to kind of lay around for a little bit. Being connected with your body allows you to notice and talk to your body and figure out what's wrong with you, right? So like, let's say you've got a tummy ache and you're not sure what's going on. I would say a lot of people just kind of push through. I'm gonna just take these Tums, keep going, or I'm gonna get this, stomach medicine and keep going. It might look like, okay, let me just do some breath work. It might look like, when did I notice that this stomach ache started? Oh, it started when I learned that someone sent me a text that we need to talk. Okay, so that might mean that I'm kind of anxious about that. And so when I get anxious, I know that my stomach might get activated. So being connected with your body allows you to not just process emotion, right? Anger, joy, sadness, things of that nature, but the feelings of it. Anxiousness, nervousness, unsettled, feeling unappreciated, unheard, things of that nature. And so from my perspective, especially in Black and brown bodies, going way, 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 way back, right? We've experienced a lot of trauma, and that trauma changes our DNA. It changes how we show up. It changes how we interact with other people. It changes how we even think, right? And so with our bodies being used as workhorses for so long, we're used to just going, 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 going. And so that's why sometimes when we have these, like, for example, screeners for anxiety and depression, and they say, oh, has this impacted your ability to show up for work? No, like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm going to push through. But maybe if the questions were more like, has this impacted your ability to daydream? Has this impacted, your ability to kind of hang out and talk with your friends, right? Like, are you able to fall asleep in a decent amount of time? Are you keeping up with your hair, right? Like, these questions that really allow you to think differently and start to realize, okay, well, maybe I've been running rampant so much that I didn't even notice that, like, my hips are really tight, or my shoulders are really tight, or my feet have been killing me, but I have to go to work. I have to be able to do this. I have to keep up with the world that we live in. So I don't get an opportunity to just sit and be and take the time to, even if you're just like sitting on the couch watching TV, doing like a body scan, wiggling your toes, doing some ankle circles, checking in with your knees, coming all the way up to the top of your head. You're conditioned to just move all the time and go all the time and be on go all the time. It is hard to be connected with our bodies. So a lot of that is just slowness, and which can feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it could feel
And
unproductive,
unproductive, like you're
not doing that.
lazy.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Humans are seasonal creatures, right? So we look out, I think it's February right now. So we're looking out at the trees. There's nothing really on them, right? A lot of animals and creatures are moving slower and hibernating, we are just as much of seasonal creatures as they are, right? We're very primitive in nature. We've evolved from that, which means that we probably do need to go slower in the winter. That's why your body's tired. That's why you want to sleep longer. That's why you don't really have motivation to do things. It's because we're not really meant to be doing a whole bunch of things. However, in our world, especially the Western world, we're taught you got to be on go. What's productive if you're laying at home, right? Your worth is so intertangled with productivity that it's hard to actually honor and slow down and check in with your body.
The body, well, 2 notes on that too, is one of the reasons that I started to change how I behaved, like TMI with the menstrual cycle.
Let's talk about it.
Just deciding to, okay, knowing when it comes on and knowing when I have those hormonal changes, let me go ahead and change my diet, or let me go ahead and slow down, not book too many things around that time. So even in that sense,
there are 4 stages to the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Nobody gets taught that.
We don't have any rest.
There's no rest, right? And you're not supposed to. If you want, it can be helpful to eat throughout those different stages differently. Do different exercise routines. Like some stages allow you to have more energy and be able to do like more high intensity workouts. Some are meant for you to just do slow yoga or Pilates workouts or walking. And then obviously that one is just like, girl, don't even move. But, you know, we don't get taught that. We don't get taught that you're allowed to, like, we are cyclical, right? Everything is a cycle in some ways. There's the moon cycle, there's the cycle of rotations around the sun, there's the seasonal changes. So we just aren't taught that we also are cycles, and we'll go through cycles of depression. We'll go through cycles of low motivation. We'll go through cycles where we don't really feel like doing anything. We'll go through cycles where we're really amped up and energized. And so that's why the levels of, or the things I do like human design and astrology are helpful, because you can learn yourself in different ways and be able to identify what those cycles look like and be able to kind of shape and create your life around that. But I think overall, just knowing your body helps you begin to identify those cycles, period, because it helps you be able to track a little bit, right? Like, okay, well, around this time of the month, I feel this way, versus later on in the month, I feel like this. And then, you know, if there's this hectic thing going on at work, I tend to feel this way. So it's honestly the simplest way to start this is just checking in with your body and seeing, like I said, doing a body scan. I love to just kind of bring my hands to my heart space or bring my hands to my belly and just like feel my breath every now and then. That's such a great, quick way to get that done. And so it can be helpful just to check in.
So what I'm hearing is the ability to connect with our bodies can help us to alter our life in a way that is a bit more aligned to who we are.
That is my belief, yes.
I love that. Because, I mean, honestly, when I think about life, I'm like, there's no right or wrong really to how you do it. It's just what works for you, what makes you happiest, more peaceful, more content, more whatever. Because, you know, the hard times don't stop coming, they come. But how do you, for yourself, navigate those things? And you talked about human design. I'm a manifesting generator.
Oh, love it. I'm a manifester. What's your profile?
1-3.
Oh,
yeah.
Love that. I'm a 2-5.
2-5. What's the 5? I forgot the 5.
5 is the heretic, and the 5 is like you have a lot of natural gifts, but a lot of times you have this magnetic piece to you that people feel like they want you to solve their problems, right? Because you're a natural problem solver. However, people tend to project what they want to see on you as a 5 line whenever that's in your profile. And that can be really hard because people will either be like, oh my God, you're the best, or like you're the worst person ever when you're not showing up in the way that they view you and see you as.
And see, so human design helped me understand my energy.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay. I am supposed to be this multifaceted person. I'm not supposed to stick to one route and go there.
I'm sure that was so helpful.
Yeah, I was conditioned.
Yes.
Yeah. Sitting there thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just stick to one thing and do it? And then human design said, well, that's because that's not how you work. Right. And that's your superpower. So you should lean into that. Right. And then I have a business coach, hi Teresa. She's who introduced me to human design. And I remember talking to her about something about that. I was like, I just hate that I can't stick to one thing. I'm going to work on changing that. And with so much love, she said, well, I'm not saying that's not something you need to work on. However, I want you to consider that the things that you want to change about yourself are sometimes the things that you need to accept about yourself. And that you need to work with and not against. Yes. So, you can decide to change it. It's your choice. But just think about it. Is this something that you need to work on or that you need to learn to accept? And I think that kind of connects to knowing your body. Is this something I need to fight against? Or do I need to accept it, learn how to work with it? Right.
Yes, 100,000%. One of the things you said is that you're a manifesting generator. And we're talking about your sacral authority. Being connected with your body helps you show up in that space so much differently, right? Because as a sacral authority, just kind of give a quick rundown, you have to be able to understand your, like you were saying, my hell yeses or my absolute no's. And so much of that, especially for sacral authority, is trusting that gut instinct and trusting how it feels in your body. Are you energized? Are you awakened? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling you like, I got to do this right now? Or is it like, I'm depleted, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I feel burned at both edges, I feel frustrated, right? I feel angry. So being in your body allows you to be able to identify, okay, this does feel good, right? Like I'm feeling lit up. Like some of the things I describe is that piece of food that you've been waiting on, your favorite food all day, and it's like you eat it and it's just like out of nowhere you're just dancing, right? Like you're moving. It's that same concept. Your body's so grateful and happy and just like alive and energized, versus like I'm an emotional authority, and so I have to ride out my emotional waves, and which means I have to be able to identify when I'm at this part of my wave, when I'm at this part of my wave, and then when I'm back down in kind of a clearer space. So incorporating a lot of that somatic work and body work helps you to be able to identify what feels good for you, how you want to show up, and where you want to go moving forward. Because especially in human design, we've been conditioned to think that we make decisions up here in our mind, but in human design, it teaches you that you make decisions based on what your body feels, like what's going on in your body. So there's sacral authority, there's emotional authority, there's splenic authority, and splenic is like a baby whisper, right? It's like that true gut intuition, like maybe you don't want to do that. But if you're conditioned, as most of us are, to fight off those small urges, right? Almost like if you get that little tickle in your throat and you're like, I feel a little tickle in my throat, but you just kind of ignore it and power through. And then you wake up the next day with the full blown headache and the nausea. And you're like, well, I didn't even know I was getting sick. Did you not know? Or did you not just listen to that little teeny tiny voice that said, you might want to start loading up on that lemon and ginger now, right? And so being in your body and being able to just kind of start to recognize the differences of all experiences, right? All different types of, what is the word I'm looking for? Stimulation, right? So like how it feels when you step outside and the sun's shining and like you just kind of feel it on your skin. That's being in your body just as much as doing breath work, just as much as yoga. It's the small pieces in life of just noticing how these things feel and just being curious about it. You don't need to assign like, okay, this feels bad, this feels good, this feels, X, Y, and Z. Just be curious, right? You hear a lot of therapists say that. Just be curious. Notice it. Can you be with it for a little bit? You don't have to fix it or do anything or hurry up and figure out what to do next. Just kind of be aware, right? And I think building that awareness helps you to begin to feel more complete feel more whole in your body and just be present in your body.
It's funny because noticing my body changes were the things that led me to get into therapy first of all. Because and I talked about this in the first episode, but I had a triggering moment and I was like, why do I feel like this? Like my gut feels bad. Like I just feel bad in my gut. And that's when I started to learn the language around it was, oh, you're feeling resentment. When you're resentful, it hits you like where your sacral or even solar plexus areas are. And when you're feeling this, it kind of hits me in the heart. And so at the time, I didn't have the language for it. So I said, I need a professional to help me figure out what is going on with my body.
Tell me what's going on.
Why are these emotions hitting me so physically? So yeah, that connection is so important. Well, so for you also, because I saw that you are also a sex and a therapist.
Yeah, sex and couples therapy.
So, and it talked about experimental therapy that sometimes you'll pull out, or
experiential.
Experiential.
Yes. Experiential is really fun because it quite literally is talking about, can you bring the client back to like the right now, the here and now, what's going on in the therapy room. So what that looks like sometimes is I might lean and I'll be like, I'm just feeling like it's off. I'm feeling like the energy is off here. Like, what's going on between the two of you, right? So I might name that. Sometimes I might have them stand up and go to opposite sides of the corner of the room and kind of say, okay, can it be fair that this can be true and this can be true? Okay, take a step forward. Okay, well, can you share what you need to do with her? Can he share what he needs from you? Okay, can you both do that? Okay, take a step forward. So experiential, I love it because it allows you to, I think it really easily incorporates somatic work and body work because it really has you kind of be present to what's happening versus like a CBT, right? No shade to CBT whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm a CBT.
Right. But it's a lot of worksheets, right? It's a lot of worksheets. You're doing a lot of writing. You're doing a lot of logs. You're doing a lot of prompts and things of that nature. Whereas experiential, you're just really naming what's happening in the room and you're not bullshitting the clients about it, right? It's like, this shit is hard. Like I feel the energy I feel how frustrated you are and I feel how hurt you are and I can witness this, right? There's a vast amount of experiential theories under that umbrella. But I really like to just kind of make up my own sometimes. I promise I'm licensed. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But there are some where like EFT, emotionally focused therapy, is an experiential therapy,
I've heard
right?
about
And so
that.
it talks about the emotions, the cycle, the negative interaction cycle that the couple's in a lot of times, being able to name that in the room, being able to really, EFT a lot is like, and tell me, like, I just can imagine how hard that is for you. And it might feel like your therapist is harping on this feeling. And I'll say this, and I hope this doesn't deter anyone. A lot of times EFT, like the goal is to cry.
Okay.
Like the goal is to evoke that emotion, right? Because how often do things go unsaid in relationships? How often do things be left unsaid in relationships? And so it can be important to just like name that and hold, like the therapist will just hold space for you to feel that for a while without feeling like you need to do anything about it right there in the moment.
EFT, I've heard of NET. And the reason why I wanted you to speak a little bit about, because I was just curious myself, like, what is experiential therapy? Is to really emphasize to people who are listening that there are other therapies out there. You don't have to sit there. I mean, you can, but you don't have to sit there and talk to your therapist and describe what's going on. Although very beneficial, if you are someone who truly believes talking doesn't really work for me, investigate other things. Investigate other ways of healing or getting things out of your system or even discovering things. Because you mentioned how like there's an awareness piece too of someone even going out to see, okay, I've noticed things in my life or my relationships or my patterns of behavior. I'm curious how people get to that awareness piece first and then seek the help.
It all depends on what you're motivated by, right? I will say a lot of times people are motivated by another person, right? My girlfriend says this is what's happening for me. My boyfriend says this is what I do.
Really?
Money, right? Like I keep fucking up at work and I
Yeah.
can't my anxiety won't let me show up at work on time. Kids can be a great motivator, parents can be a great motivator. And so a lot of times it's just like depends on the person and what they want to, the motivation that they have. Most people do have internal motivation, so I don't want to shade any of those, but most likely than not, there's an important person in their lives that says, like, have you ever thought about this? Or this doesn't seem like it happens a lot. Unfortunately, we use the word normal far too often. So, you get like, this isn't normal or this isn't normal. I think more recently, a big motivation is TikTok, social media, it can be great because it does allow for a large, like to create some parasocial relationships and to reach different people and talk to different people and get their perspectives. And so I will say that's been a lot of, from what I've seen, like, oh, I was watching this TikTok and I think I might have ADHD or I think I might have this. And so we bring it in, we talk about it, we chat, we figure it out, we kind of look at the DSM maybe and identify some of the things that may or may not align with that. But I think motivation just depends on where the person is at their point in lives, because you could be married for 40 years and your husband or wife has been telling you for 40 years that you need help. And then it might just be like, I turned 65 and I just want to live life differently, right? And that's where I want to go to therapy. So it really just depends on the person.
You said friends can encourage that. Okay, I got a few friends that I need to put some in their ear.
Gently, right? Right. Just kind of like, oh. And I think friends, a lot of times what I've been loving to see is that people just are sharing what they've learned from their own therapy and how it's helped them, right? And so at least I'll say, like in my community, like my family and friends now are, I think, way more interested in therapy because I'm like, oh, I'm telling them about my therapy, which by the way, every therapist should be able to do their own therapy. And I say should, not necessarily that you're able to with money and other barriers that come in between that. But most therapists have their own therapists because before we are therapists, we are humans. So I just wanted to put that out there. But in my own community, I went to therapy myself and started going, and I started to share and also require things of my family and friends that I think kind of sparked that thought in them of like, like, I wonder how we got here, and that's curious. And so they've gone to their own therapy, and I am very happy to see that, especially in Black and brown families and in cultures, of being able to start normalizing and making it, I think, a more popular topic to kind of go and seek mental help and make mental health a thing, right? And make it a more important piece, just as important as like our physical health and our bodily health.
Right, because you go to the doctor once a year for that physical checkup, for that taking care of your body.
You got all your specialists, you go to GYN, you go to your nutritionist, you go to your, what's the name of the skin doctor? Dermatologist, right? Your therapist should be kind of top priority too on the list, right? Like, and again, it doesn't have to be, I think some people think that's 2 weeks or every week out the month. It doesn't have to be that. Like therapy can be, I have clients who I see weekly. I have clients who I see bi-weekly. I have clients who I see once a month. I have clients who I'm like, hey, it's been 3 months. Or they'll be like, it's been a year. I want to see you again, And so it goes back to that piece of making it work for you. I tell my clients in the intake, the minute that therapy becomes an extra stressor, it takes away from the efficacy of it and it takes away from the potency of it.
Yeah.
And so you really want to make therapy work for you, work for your financial resources, work for the time and space that you have. There are therapists who see clients up to 10 p.m. or later. There's sliding scale resources. There are free resources in some states and things of that nature. And so just starting to hopefully spread the word that it doesn't have to just be through insurance or it doesn't have to just be out of pocket payment.
Yeah. And again, there's other forms of therapy.
Yeah.
So if talking might be, okay, that's not in my pay range, they could explore other things.
Yeah, you can just kind of start to see. I think, to me personally, any yoga class is a form of therapy.
Yeah.
It's a form of being able to spend an hour with your body. You might initially just be going, especially in the Western world, oh, I'm going to yoga to lose weight. I'm going to yoga to get more flexible and things of that nature. But the more that you go, the more that you start to realize, okay, well, I was off for 2 weeks. I really feel it in my body. Now, people might not say it like that, but that's the exact thing we were talking about earlier in terms of recognizing what's happening for you in your body. People who are nervous about talk therapy, I feel like Reiki is a great option because Reiki is very subtle energy healing. It's being able to kind of go through the 7 chakras, and you pick up generally of what's happening in those chakras, and we have some conversation at the end, but we don't have to. That's the beauty of it. We may have like an oracle card or a tarot pull at the end, and you are allowed to say as little or as much as you want about how that resonates with you or what's going on in your life. But I think Reiki, again, it's not necessarily like an actual like therapy, but it is a healing form, and it is a healing practice, and it does help to move some things around. And so whenever you are ready, it helps you to be able to identify, okay, my chakra centers. I know when I felt someone's hands hovering above this, or I know when I felt their hands here. You might not have like the therapy language yet, but you can start to identify what your feelings are. You can start to identify how that felt in your body and things of that nature.
That's kind of what one of my business coach was talking about when she did NET was kind of, I guess they do like muscle tappings or whatever.
Yes.
And like being able to feel like something shift.
Yes.
I was like, oh.
Yes.
I didn't even know that was off.
Yes.
And then, but this feels, much better. So, and I like what you said about how we take care of our other parts of our, like, like dermatologists. We have our physicians and such, and incorporating some more body healing and mental healing is just another part of that. It's a holistic approach. And that's a lot of the times that I try to explain to people who are not the hugest fans of mental health. They're like, oh, people are always complaining about stuff. Or, oh, it's like, oh my gosh, just push through it, just get through it. And I'm like, well, what if there is just a better way to live? Why not live it?
Yes. And I think people, I won't even say that it's just older generations. I just think that it's a cultural piece a lot of times. But mental health is not new, right? Like that family member that was closed off and didn't really talk to anybody most likely had probably some form of anxiety. The family member who everyone thought was weird or talked too loud or showed up differently, they might have had a touch of the tizzy, right? Like mental health is not a new concept, and we haven't been just out of nowhere struggling with this, right? It's just that we didn't have the words to be able to describe, and we maybe did, but we just weren't, because let's be fair, as Black and brown people, we haven't been treated the best in the medical system. And so rightfully so, we're very apprehensive to trust anybody with our healing. We'd rather go to, the church, right? Or we'd rather go to the medicine lady or the person we know who can help us, not necessarily root work, but maybe root work, who knows? And again, all forms of healing. And can we begin to start to open our minds up to this type of form of healing, right? Like, you already pay for your insurance anyway, why not explore it? Right? Like, why not see what it's like? And that's why I think it's so important to highlight that you're allowed to interview your therapist. You're allowed to see what the vibes are. You're allowed to ask them questions. You don't Generally 15-minute consultations are free. I don't know. There may be various changes, like every therapist is different, but because we're wanting to know if we're going to be a good fit for you just as much as you want us to be a good fit we want to know if you're going to be a good fit for us just as much as we want to be a good fit for you, right? Because essentially, like, my theory, like I said, I do couples and sex work. I don't really necessarily work with a lot of individuals like with ADHD or with autism or borderline personality disorder. So you want to be able to go to a therapist who has that level of expertise. And I've been seeing like a lot of TikToks of like, my therapist fired me, or they, said they weren't a good fit after the first run, and I've gone through a couple first runs. It's not, I promise it's not a personal thing. It's that we want to be able to show up for you and give you the best care possible. We want to know that when we say you can trust us, you can really trust us, because we have worked with this multiple times. We've done extensive trainings on it. We do our CEs on it, continuing educations on it. We read the books on it. We have passion and interest for it. And so that's why, if you meet with a therapist and they say, unfortunately, we're not able to work together, a lot of times is that we want you to find someone who is going to be able to provide you what you need, not just because like we don't like you or you trauma dumped or anything like that. Like this is the space to trauma dump, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's like this is
what you should do. And what it's for. It's just that once you've expressed what your specific trauma is, we might say, you know what, I actually think someone else could better help you get to the goals that you want. And I generally will say, let me try to kind of put some referrals together to get you to the people that you need to be with.
I really like that piece of not only saying that you can interview your therapist, you're totally allowed to do that, but also not to take it so to heart when your therapist says, I don't think this is a good fit. It is more times than not a benefit to the client.
Yes.
It's like, I want you to get to where you want to go, and I know that I can't properly help you get there.
Yeah. And it can be hard. Like, it can be hard because we may actually really like you, right? And like want to work with you. It's just that we have to recognize, and this is a part of holding that licensure of do no harm. If I'm trying to force myself to show up for you just because I like you, that means that I'm not going to be well educated in what is going on. I'm not going to feel confident in being able to help you in that. And I might be just trying to force it all because the connection is there, right? And so it's important that, yes, we can have a great connection. And we want to make sure that we are educated enough, and should be making sure that we are educated enough and trained properly to be able to show up for you in the ways that you want.
So, what are some other things that you feel people don't know about therapy or healing that you would want people to know, or any myths that you would want to debunk?
And therapists we have our own shit, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, we have our own shit. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of therapy, is that before I'm anything else, I'm a human. So when I tell you it's hard to sit with them feelings, I get it. I don't be wanting to sit with my feelings either. When I have couples, I'm like, I've been to couples therapy. I know how hard it is. I'm in a relationship. I know how hard it is to be in a relationship. And so one thing I think people on the flip side of that have to remember is that we are human. So we are going to have sick days. We are going to be gone for extended periods of time. We aren't going to get it right all the time. We may have bad days at work where the connection might not have been there. We might not have been present. Call us on that, like tell us, like, I really don't feel like you were there, so that we can apologize and repair that relationship. But, I think that's one of the biggest ones, is that there is this perceived power that therapists have of like, well, I think people think that we're better than other people because we can, of the degree and what it is, but we're not better. We're all humans here, just struggling with the same things. We just have a different degree and licensure, and we're able to look at it from a different way. I think some other myths, again, are that we're going to fix people, we're fixers, or that I'm constantly psychoanalyzing you, right? I'm not. A lot of the work is just being present with you in the room and holding space for you, and being able to say, hey, like, I see that it's just some heavy energy going on. You want to lay on the ground? You want to talk? You want to lay down for a little bit? Do you want to use this time to do a job application? Would that be helpful for you? So many people come to therapy, and this is like the only hour that they have for themselves. And so it can be helpful to let them use that for how they need to use that for, right?
The human part is important too, because when I was interviewing therapists, I had not the best experience with one.
Oh no.
She was so condescending. I think I had triggered her a bit. I was so like I was interested in EMDR. And so at the time, I was going through this whole colorism affected me. And I was, going through low self-esteem. She was like, well, at first it kind of seemed like she didn't want to take me. And so I called her on it. I said, ma'am, you've been hitting me with a lot of like, oh, well, it's going to cost this much. And I was like, oh, I'll pay out of pocket. Oh, well, you might need a referral. I'm like, okay, I can get a referral. Just like a lot of things. So I said, is there, do you not feel like I'm a good fit? She went off. I don't understand why you're here. A little low self-esteem. Is it going to hurt anyone? I have clients who have been brutally, SA'd. And I have a client who went to war and they had PTSD. She's like, have you ever been SA'd? I said.
She asked you that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
During a 15-minute call.
Okay. So, let me be very clear. Run away.
Oh, I ran away.
Run away.
I ran away fast.
Oh my goodness.
And it was... At the time, I was more angry at the fact that, okay, if I wasn't in a good mental space, what could that have done? Because she could have just said, you know what, you're right. I don't feel like you're a good fit. I feel like what you're doing right now is enough. Have a great day.
And you know what else makes me sad about that is that thinking about how many people have had those interactions and that's been what stopped them. Fuck this. I'm not about to do this. Is somebody going to talk to me like that? Like, I'm not about to do that. And honestly, I can't tell you the amount of times that I get clients who say things like that. I've heard some very, very outlandish stories. This is actually going to have to go up. I can't believe she asked if you've been SA'd. That's just disgusting to me. What if you were?
Yeah. I didn't quit because I was like, well, humans are humans. And she was probably, like I said, the way that she was very... just kept going. I said, well, maybe I triggered her in a way, or maybe something happened, basically.
And that's why it's so important. So like in the therapy world, we have what we call self of the therapist. And that's being able to recognize when your shit is on the table and your shit is in the room, right? And so it's being able to do what you need to do in order to maintain that. A lot of times it's therapy. It might not be necessarily talk therapy. It might be that you have your body movement date, going to the gym. It might be that you have your Reiki. It might be that you have your acupuncture, whatever it is. But self of the therapist is being able to recognize, you know what? I'm so sorry. I am triggered by this. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but there's a lot happening for me. And let me just take a step back. We probably won't be the best fit. I appreciate you calling and I appreciate you holding space for me, right? But someone who's not properly taking care of their self with a therapist might be seeing a client who triggers them. Because that's I guess another myth, right? Or not even myth, but a little known fact is that in the therapy world, a lot of times we recognize and attract our own triggers in the room. They call us wounded healers, right? And they call us that for a reason, that we've experienced things and want to now help guide other people through those things. And so it's so important to be able to recognize when it does come in the room. I've had clients that I've worked with them for a couple sessions, and then all of a sudden I'm like, we're not going to be able to move through this, right? Now, I might sit with it for a couple sessions. I might seek my supervision, my peer supervision. I might seek resources. I might talk to my own therapist, and I might be able to resolve it and work through it. But I'm still going to say, I want to talk to you about something. When you said this, I noticed that this came up for me and I just wanted to apologize, right? You may not have noticed it, but this is what was happening for me, and I wasn't being fully present. I think it's so important to name and be able to call yourself out in the room and hold yourself accountable on those triggers. You have to, because that's what makes you, it models that for the client, right? Like that's the first step, is being able to model identifying. Can we just take a second for a minute? I'm actually a little triggered and I'm going to do some breath work, or I'm going to stand up. I'm going to take a stretch. You can feel free to do that if you want. You don't have to, but we've been talking about some heavy stuff. And so I'm going to kind of move my body a little bit, or even being able to, I think people think that we don't cry in session. That's a whole other thing of like, you just sit and you take your notes and you just look. But we're human. Sometimes when you're talking, we can get emotional, because we can feel it. A lot of times we can feel that energy in the room. And so it doesn't happen often, right? And hopefully it's not happening often, because then it's kind of like, okay, well, you don't want your client to feel like they have to comfort you.
Right, yeah.
Right. But it is important that we are human. And so we'll be in that space with you. We'll sit in those feelings with you. But we have to be able to call ourselves on our own shit and recognize when something is coming up for us and do the appropriate things that are necessary to process through that. And that includes having to, discontinue the therapeutic relationship if we feel like we're going to be doing more harm than good in working with that client.
This is a bit of a nosy question. When I was watching couples therapy, I forgot what it was on, like Showtime
Oh,
or something.
Showtime. Yeah, I love that show.
And they had like a little like therapies room where all the therapists got together. Do you guys do that?
In my training program, yeah.
Really? So you guys kind of like, oh, I'm struggling with this client. Like,
yes. Yeah.
What is it? Oh, that's so cool.
So in my training program, essentially what we would do is we would have what we call like supervision, right? And supervision is with a licensed supervisor, whether you're LCMHC, licensed clinical mental health counselor. Yes. Sorry, all names changed. An LMFT like me, or LPCs, or social workers, LCSWs. We all are supervised, right? And have licensed supervisors who are above us, especially in our training programs. So in my training program, we would have supervision, and we have what we call live supervision. And so in our therapy rooms, we had a clinic and we would have video cameras and audio in each therapy room. And clients would consent to this. They would know that they're coming to, a therapy school. And we would essentially like go meet with our clients, have that session. We would stop halfway through and go back in and talk with our supervisor and our cohort members about what's happening in real time. And for me personally, that was one of my biggest challenges, because I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I am a very recovering, like trying to get out of my independence into soft life. So I'm very much like, I got it. I'm cool. I'm good. I'll figure it out. Like, but tell me I'm doing a good job. But like, I don't.
Not too much. Not too much.
Not too much, So that was really hard for me to be able to remember that any feedback is for the client's benefit, right? It's not necessarily about me being a bad therapist. It's because, we're trying to just, someone's offering you a different perspective, right? So it's literally the same thing that you're doing for the client. And so I don't really get to do that as much or really often at all in the real therapy world as a licensed therapist. But I really do miss that peer supervision and that live supervision and being able to kind of talk through the case in real time. So they will do it. We do it every now and then.
That was so cool. I was like, that's such a great idea, just to bounce ideas off of other, licensed professionals, of course.
And it helps keep you sane. It helps you remember, like, okay, like, it's other people going through this. Like, even though I'm fully licensed, I still go to supervision once a month, because it just helps to talk through cases in a different way with other therapists. And it just is an extra level of support. And again, it helps with the self of the therapist, to be able to say, I'm really struggling with this case. This is my own stuff that I have, and this is how it's interacting. And you can just be able to use it as like a vent space. You can use it as like, I want some, advice on this and things of that nature. But supervision is such a beautiful relationship in the therapy world. I love I had a great, awesome supervisor. I had a couple great supervisors that have helped me along the way. So shout out to y'all.
Shout out to y'all. So fun. Okay, so we talked about a lot. And just to recap, speaking about the different types of therapy and the different forms of healing and what it can do to reconnect you to your body and bettering that life, and how we can bring awareness to our friends and families who need therapy. And just also being a bit nosy about kind of the behind the scenes of a therapist, and how we can make therapy work for us, and how it isn't just a place of like, oh, I just need the gym. I don't need anything else.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're taking care of your physical health. Amazing. But there is still your mental health that needs that care and attention. if you want to live the life that's, most aligned with yourself.
Yeah.
If you want that. So my question to you is, you've spoken about this, you provided us all this amazing wisdom. How does that make you feel?
Well, like I said, I'm a Scorpio stellium, right? So I have a lot of Scorpio placements, but I'm also a Virgo midheaven and a Virgo rising. And so I just love being able to give practical solutions, be able to talk about healing, be able to explore healing. So it makes me I feel energized. I feel excited about this podcast. I feel seen. I feel grateful. And I just feel hopeful that someone out there will be able to listen to this and just think about things differently and maybe find their modality of healing that works for them.
Oh, that made me feel so warm. So let the people know where they can connect with Corinne.
Okay, so I'm in the process, and I will share this because it's a journey. So I'm in the process of building my platform, Flowering Heart Wellness LLC. So website TBD, right, is coming.
We'll be waiting.
But you can find me on Instagram at flowering_heart_wellness. So flowering_heart wellness. You can find me on Facebook, Flowering Heart Wellness. And if you are wanting to connect and possibly work together as a client, I do have a wait list right now, so I'm not currently taking new clients. But you can find me at familysolutionsandwellness.com. I'm actually located in Cary, North Carolina, but if you are in the state of North Carolina, we can work together. So just shoot me an email, see some of the offerings we have, and we can hopefully work from there.
Yes. Do connect with her. I've had the best time, and I also forgot to say I love your hair.
Thank you.
Oh my, you know what I forgot to do as well? So I got this idea from someone named Nicholas Hamilton. He has, I think he has cerebral palsy. But he started this interview off by like talking about himself. He's like, I'm a biracial Black male. Then I was like, oh, we're gonna talk about biraciality, but not too much. It's Black History Month. Y'all's subscription cut off at the 14th. I'm just kidding.
Screaming, y'all get half the month.
No, look, you have the entire month. Don't let anyone tell you don't have it.
Your blackness is your blackness.
Your blackness is your blackness. So, but then he was just describing what he was wearing, and I was like, that's such a great idea for people who are, visually impaired. So do you want to start off with what do you look like?
So I'm caramel right now. Okay. Well, I'm probably a little bit higher than caramel, y'all, because I turn a little high yellow in the winter. I'm a little caucus right now. But I have periwinkle colored hair.
I love it.
On a stoned choker that has various color beads. I'm in a white shirt, and then I have a blue romper on top, and I have rose gold earrings on.
Love it. Okay, so I'm a dark chocolate.
It's a lovely chocolate.
Dark brown Black woman with a twist in my hair. I have gold hoops on with a dark brown shirt with a graphic on it that says, "And how does it make you feel?" These shirts, I will be giving one away.
Available now.
After the 100 subscribers. So share it with your friends, subscribe. And these bright orange.
They're gorgeous.
Sweatpants with
they have polka dots on them?
Hot pink flowers.
Oh, yeah. I love those.
I love it. Well, thank you for going on that little journey with me.
No, I like that a lot.
So, thank you so much again, Corinne, for joining us and providing all this wisdom. This has been so much fun. Like another reason I love Geminis. Just another one.
Thank you, because we really be getting such a bad rap. Like, just love all our personalities, please.
All of them. They're all fun.
They're all fun at times.
And the Scorpio, I love that energy as well.
Yes.
Again, if you want to connect with Corinne, I'll have all of her details in the description. If you really enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe, like, follow, all the things, share, and use the hashtag AHDY. And how does that make you feel?
Connect with my girl.
Just take the first letter of each name, hashtag it, use it in the conversation. But until next time, please remember to be kind to yourself.
Love it.